Hello and welcome to ScotDance USA's World Champion Dancers and Teachers interview series. I'm Emma Schiff. The Professional Development Committee at ScotDance USA wants to help the Highland dancing world stay motivated during these challenging times. That's why we're talking to the best of the best, world champion dancers and their teachers. We'll learn about how they achieved what they did, plus their advice for dancers and teachers struggling during quarantine. We hope these videos can bring you inspiration. Enjoy.
Hi, Mary Beth and Sheila. We're super excited to interview with you today on behalf of FUSTA Professional Development Committee. We're here today to talk to former world champions and their teachers to help inspire the dancers around the world going through unprecedented times through COVID. And a lot of them are struggling, obviously, with no more championships this year. So the goal is to try and motivate and keep them going, keep their spirits high. In addition, as professional development, we want to offer other teachers the opportunity to hear from teachers that have brought up world champions and get some great tips for them to help their teaching methodology as well as inspire other teachers. So I'm going to kick it over to Emma Schiff, former world champion as well, and she is going to be conducting today's interview.
Well, first, I just want to thank you both so much for joining this. I think this is going to be really helpful for, a lot of people in the Highland world. I want to start with the kind of obvious question, and that is, there are no championships, there's no events for at least the foreseeable future. As a dancer, how do you stay motivated? And as a teacher, how do you keep your students motivated? Mary Beth, let's start with you.
So as a teacher, keeping the kids motivated is changing them up, doing a variety of things in dance class, trying to keep it fun for them. We've been doing some in-class seminars with other teachers, trying to motivate them, working on elevation and strength, a little bit of cross training, and just trying to make it fun when they can't compete right now.
I mean, especially now that the championship steps for this year have been moved forward to next year. You can never get too good at the steps, especially the championship steps at any time. And I think they're basically working on that, plus the premiership steps and a little bit of choreography just to change it up. Because that is something that they can do like in a performance with the class, and there's no right or wrong way to do that. The championships will start hopefully early in the new year, and since they've had all this time off, I'm quite sure they want to be on the top of their game when they compete in those events.
Mary Beth, you competed at the Cowell level. For a lot of people that dance at the world championship level, having no championships, at least until next year, it's hard to find something to work for. How do you, as a dancer, keep yourself practicing when you don't even know the next time you're going to be up on stage?
Well, I think I was kind of different or unusual in that manner because I never really, Cowell was never my goal. I danced because I loved it. And I went to competitions. If I won, great. If I didn't, that was okay too. So my motivation as a dancer was never the competition. It was always just to dance and because I loved it. I think a dancer needs to look deep down inside of them and ask themselves, why am I doing this? Are you doing it just for the competitions? If because you can't compete is not encouraging you to practice, then that's not the right reason to dance. Look down inside of you and really figure out what your main reason why you dance is, and you'll find that inspiration to keep going.
That's a great answer.
Even in, regular times, it can be difficult to get all of your dancers really motivated into practicing. As teachers, what's the best way to get your dancers excited about practicing?
I think that anybody that is involved in Highland dancing has to have a love for the dancing, because let's face it, we all know it's not easy. And if all you're in it for is the medals and trophies, that's really not going to work, I don't think. And I think if you really want to get anywhere in the Highland dancing, you shouldn't need to be motivated. You should be able to self-motivate. I think what you'll find with all world champions, I'm sure you and Natalie both, you didn't have to be told to practice.
I totally agree with you, Sheila. And something that maybe you guys are not aware of, I know some do know and some don't, is that when I started taking lessons from Sheila, I had lessons once a month. I lived in Kansas City. She lived in Detroit and then moved to different places. And I only had lessons once a month. And in between those lessons, it was up to me.
That must have been difficult for you.
It was very difficult, but like I said, I love the dancing so much, and it was an internal desire for me to be the best I could be. And, Sheila just happened to have the same attitude I did, and, we became our family.
Very good. I agree. I mean, I always say to all of my kids, it's if you don't have the passion, then you have to be doing something that you're passionate about. And if you're not passionate about it, then find your passion.
All these world-class athletes, which the three of you are, we're all passionate, I'm sure, about your art form and worked at it, and you didn't have to be told to take notes. And Mary Beth, for instance, in the days when we worked together, like she said, I would see her once a month, but she took notes upon notes upon notes.
So Mary Beth, you had clearly a lot of time in between your lessons to practice on your own. What did your practice routine look like? How did you work and make things better?
Like Sheila said, I took a lot of notes. So when I would go for lessons, I would miss school on a Friday, and I would fly up there. We would dance for 3 or 4 hours on Friday, 6 hours on Saturday, and another 3 or 4 before I got on a flight to go back home. So if I could walk. But I took a lot of notes, and my mom was from Scotland, but my dad was a farm boy, and he knew nothing about Scottish dancing, but he was the one that took an interest. He bought a SOBHD textbook, so he knew what all the positions were, how it should look. And we just went over my notes, and he helped me practice. I would practice about an hour a day. And, he really didn't know how the movements were supposed to be, but he knew what turnout was. He knew how the arms should be. And he just helped me practice that way and helped me get it better. And then the next time that I would go up to Sheila, hopefully I had the things corrected that I had in my notes.
You bring up a really good point. One thing I always think is very important for dancers is to have that triangle of support. I mean, it's down to the teacher, the dancer, and the parent.
And the parent.
Or a grandparent, or having somebody else supporting you in that journey, I think is paramount.
Yes.
Oh, I agree. And actually, Mary Beth would be the first one to tell you. Her mom, although she was from Scotland, she would be the first to tell you she didn't know the first thing about it and really wasn't interested in doing it. But her dad was wonderful. He was all in for helping her practice because he saw the passion that she had for it, And so, yeah, that was
wonderful.
We worked well as a team, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We actually became a family. My family became Sheila's family, and Sheila's family became mine.
Yeah, and that is actually the truth, because we still feel like family.
There was a time too in the 70s, I think it was around 75 or so. Remember when the schools went on strike?
Yeah.
All the schools went on strike in Kansas City and closed down. And my parents put me on a flight, took me up to Sheila. Sheila enrolled me in school up there, and I lived with her for about 6 weeks till the school
Yeah.
got right.
Wow.
Regular lessons.
My mom worked for TWA. That's the only reason I was able
That's
to
true.
travel
Yeah.
and fly. We did not have money. My parents worked really hard for me to do what I loved.
Now, as teachers, how do you help students not, get down when they hit a bump in the road?
Well, for me, when my kids hit the swords or kick the swords and they come off the stage, I'll say, if you're going to hit it once, at least hit it 3 or 4 times. Make a joke out of it. It's
Good wall up. Yeah.
Hands down, brush it off. Just think about your next dance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. I think that, and actually, I think sometimes it's the parents that get more upset than the children, and put the pressure on the children if they kick the sword, for instance, or do a wrong step or whatever. And it was always my philosophy that, so if you made a mistake, okay, you made a mistake. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's a mistake in a Highland dancing competition. You know what I mean? As a teacher, if you get onto the child when they come off the stage and say, now why did you do that? I mean, that you were doing a lovely sword and then you kicked it in the last step. Well, what good is that going to do to anybody?
I always tell my students this story. I was competing over in Scotland, and I think it was the Edinburgh Festival. I can't remember exactly where. And I did the best sword dance I thought I had ever done. And came out of the swords, did my step close. As soon as I closed my feet in first, I kicked my sword. And I bowed. I mean, what can you do? And I just started laughing and smiling. And I came off and people said, how can you laugh about that? And I went, what am I going to do? So I always tell that story to my students when they first start competing and tell them, hey, if you mess up, you mess up. You do better the next time.
Sheila, you've produced 2 world champions, and at that time, there were very, very few American world champions. How did you make the decision to start bringing Mary Beth and some of your dancers over to Scotland for Cowell?
The decision wasn't really mine. My goal, like Mary Beth, I never thought, she's good, or Noreen Karras was the other one. I should send her to Scotland to compete at Cowell. Mary Beth went over to Scotland, and she actually, again, went by herself, stayed with my mom, right? And I kind of arranged for her to take lessons while she was there. But as far as me making a decision to have them go, that was, I never thought that way. I think a big problem nowadays is that people, teachers in particular, focus on Cowell Highland Gathering. You have to go to Cowell. Okay. I'm not saying that's not true, but people go to Cowell expecting to win nowadays. Now, that wasn't the case in the days back when Mary Beth was over there. She went to Cowell just to dance at Cowell Highland Gathering.
First year I went, I didn't place at all.
Didn't place at all, that's right. But then she went again. But it wasn't her sole focus of going there, and it certainly wasn't my focus. I think I have never once told one of my students, you should go over there and dance at Cowell because I think you've got a good chance of winning. And I think that's just setting the dancer up for a big letdown, because let's face it, it's not easy to win. It's not easy to qualify to dance in the World Championship. And so I it was never my focus, you know. And I can honestly tell you, and Mary Beth, she'll confirm this, there was nobody more surprised than me when she won the world championship. Really. Because my mindset just wasn't there, you know. I mean, I was happy when she did well in previous times, but in my wildest dreams, for me to teach someone that would win the world championship, it just wasn't in my mindset. And then, darn it, if she didn't go out and do it again the next year.
Mary Beth, what was it like for you?
So, you know, like Sheila had said, I went over there the first year, I didn't get anything. And then the next year, so each year I did better, but 76 was definitely the best memory for me because, so at the time back then, we did the Scottish Championship and Worlds all in the same day. So we did the fling and they had callbacks and you had to do it again before you qualified to go and dance again. So it was a long day, but what really made it special for me was the Navy ship, the Polaris, had just landed at Dunoon, and they came off and they came to the games, not knowing what it was, and they saw I was from America. So they came over and their ship photographer took pictures. It's the only pictures I have from Cal was what their Navy photographer took for me. And a Scottish society from Wichita, Kansas, who I used to always go and perform for them, they had came to Cal, so they were there too. So I had my own rooting section, which I had never had before, and it was just really exciting. So it made it very special for me, and especially when I won the Scottish Championship and then also won the juvenile, that was just doubly special.
You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was so shocked. And I don't want you to get this wrong. It's not that I didn't think she was a really good dancer, but I think you two probably, as well as anybody, knows how hard it is to win at Cow. Because you've got 12 judges, each judge one dance, and it's really just, no matter how good you are, I don't want to say it's luck, because it's not luck. It's definitely talent and everything else as well. But like I said before, and I'll just get back to it, I never ever had one of my students, I didn't tell them, you go over there and you have a good chance of winning Cow. It never would have occurred to me. So.
I don't think anyone knows how they'll do in Scotland at Cowell until they're there and they're going through it. And it's always it's up to the judges. I mean, you don't have control over how you're going to do, but
that is true.
The caliber of dancing, you just don't know how you measure up until you're there, to be honest with you.
Now, in fact, when they had called up our numbers to the stage, I was standing near Christine Lacey, who was my idol. She was always my idol. And she's like, you won. And I was like, no, I just won a medal. And she's like, no, you won, because I didn't hear what they had announced. So that was really exciting.
Wow.
How cool to have Christine Lacey point out to you what happened.
Yeah. I was just excited I got my number called.
Did you get nervous at Cowell?
I always got nervous in the mornings. But once I started dancing, I was pretty good. Like first couple of minutes before a dance, but the minute I stepped up on the stage, it was like I just kind of went into a zone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of preventing nerves is not just physically preparing, but mentally preparing. And I know I've had a lot of struggles with nerves over the years. Did you do anything, not just practicing, but more mentally preparing, going through dances, anything like that before you competed?
Yeah, I mean, the night before and the morning of, I would just kind of run the dances through my head and trying to remember all the corrections that I wanted to correct. But I think you're very right that it's a mental game. And I think a lot of people psych themselves out by putting too much stress on them.
After you won the first time, did you feel any pressure the next year?
I did. I felt more pressure than my whole dance career in between those 2 years. And it wasn't as fun to me because of that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to really work hard not to let it go in my mind and think about it too much.
The one thing I will say about going over to Cowell, and like Mary Beth just mentioned it a little bit, is about the strength it needs when you dance at Cowell. Because if you don't have the strength to do like 8 dances and then another, 4 dances, you're just not going to do anything. It takes a lot of work, and that is part of the practicing before you go over there, or it should be the way you practice before you go anywhere. But especially at Cowell, I think a lot of people don't realize how many competitors there actually are, and you have to dance and then qualify, and then after you qualify, then you have to dance again, and I think people don't understand that really. But
So how do you practice to get to that level where you are able to do maybe 2 or 3 of each dance in a single day? Because obviously when we're practicing, we want to work on our corrections and work on our technique, but what's the point of working on the technique if you're so tired by the 4th step of the dance that you can't even do it? How do you get your stamina to that level?
Well, I know how Sheila taught was, like I would do my fling. She'd give me my corrections. I'd do the fling again. If I didn't get them corrected, I'd do the fling again. Right there's stamina.
That is stamina. So when you were
But then-
practicing, would you do dances multiple times?
No,
Oh,
I
yeah.
only worked on technique. And then
yeah.
I would do some dancing, do the dances for my dad, but it was mainly working on technique.
Yeah, that was just my way of teaching, was doing like Mary Beth said, doing the dance through, and it's still to this day, if I take one of my daughter's classes, I mean, they just, of course, in those days, Mary Beth didn't do anything. She just said, okay, she would do it again. But nowadays, you get the eye roll and the whole bit, But she never complained once. I mean, we would do the fling, and then we would go through step by step and make the corrections. And then we would do the fling again to make sure that she understood the corrections. I think Mary Beth would be the first to tell you that she never once had leg problems. And she danced in my basement, and it was a cement floor. And that's where she danced.
And
Wow,
my practice area was also a cement floor.
Wow.
Yeah.
You must have legs of steel.
Well,
I think it was the proper way of landing. So many dancers land stiff-legged. Of course, you're going to jar your muscles and bones if you're doing that.
What was the most difficult thing for you that you had to work on? Was it turning?
So Sheila kind of made me sound like an angel. I wasn't really. So practicing on my own was very hard. My dad would help me, and I'll be honest, there was many times I went downstairs and I spit on my hand and make it look like I was sweating. Okay, I worked hard. And he'd say, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
So he would call me out on it. But practicing on my own, especially the older I got, my teens and stuff, that was very difficult. And I think elevation was always my weakness. What would you say, Sheila?
Mom, I don't know that it was your weakness, but I think it was something you worked on, and I think elevation is something you really can't teach. You'll have some students who just they might not have much else, but they have a natural bounce, a natural elevation. And then there's some kids that might have everything else and not have the elevation, So that's where you have to get them on a bar and use the bar and make sure they use their thighs and their insteps and everything in their feet to push up and land properly. And it can come, but I think on the whole, elevation is a natural God-given thing.
You both are great teachers, and I'm wondering, every teacher is a little bit different in what aspects of Highland they care about the most when they're giving corrections. So I'm curious to hear what both of you focus on the most, whether, strength, technique, stamina, elevation, turnout. What's that thing for you that's maybe your pet peeve?
I would say technique for me. The tightness of the positions and turnout. My weakness is upper body. I'm more of a bottom of the leg person, teacher.
And I guess I might say the same thing. The upper body was not my big strength, but the technique, of course, should be the most important thing, and turnout.
How do you work on turnout? Not everyone, is naturally gifted with it. You have to work on it a lot. How do you get those students that maybe struggle with it a little bit more?
The turnout is another thing that can be God-given again, because there's some dancers, no matter how much you work with them, they can just never get it. You know what I mean? And it's not because they're not trying, but there's no point in getting the turnout if you're going to twist your body to get it, I just, however, having said all that, the technique is of the basic movements, basic steps and all that is the most important thing to me,
Mary Beth, how would you work on turnout with some of your students?
I think Sheila hit it on the head about the twisting of the hips and that. So many dancers try and get the turnout from the supporting foot and not using their thighs. So I stress that a lot, that, you want to turn out your thighs, then your foot will go out. You can't turn out your foot and expect your thighs to go out. So we work a lot on body alignment. I use a lot of fun little things. Like I have these googly eyes that I have them put on their hips. So they have to keep their hips forward and look straight at me. And I try and do little fun things like that to get the idea of keeping the hips straight, but the knees going out.
Do you have any funny mishaps that have happened as well? Any other stories that you can share?
I do. So before I started taking with Sheila, I took lessons with Jean Forbes out of Dallas. Mm-hmm. And then I took from Betty Lawrence for a bit in Oklahoma City. And then my mom found Sheila through an ad in the Highlander magazine. So she contacted Sheila and said, we'd like to maybe do lessons. Of course, Sheila thought she was crazy, lessons once a month. What are you talking about? But I was going to a competition in Pennsylvania. Well, it just so happened Sheila was judging there. So Sheila said, we can't make contact, but after the competition, we'll get together and talk. Well, in the Midwest, I was winning trophies everywhere. Went up to Pennsylvania where Sheila was judging. It was my first competition. I won nothing.
And then Sheila said, I'll take you.
Well, and then we met her afterwards. I mean, she had no idea who I was. We had never seen each other.
I didn't know who she was at all. Yeah.
Look at what we've all gained from being in this Highland dancing community. We have
of course
family, friends across the world that we're all very close to. And
right.
Absolutely. So,
and I think if you talk to any one of them, they would all say the same thing. Absolutely. The main thing they got out of it was the friendships, because the part of doing the dancing came from your inner self, but the main thing that you got out of it was the friendships. That's what I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. I think this was really helpful for a lot of dancers. I learned a lot just from talking to you both.
Yes. Well, thank you, ladies, for doing this.
Well,
It's an honor to do it for you guys.
Yeah, and I just want to say, you know, I, for one, was very nervous about doing this. And I'd like to thank you both for making it painless. And I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview and for everything both of you have done for Highland dancing in this country.
You're very welcome.
Inspiration. You were chosen and selected as the first video we want to post.
Really?
Yes.
100%, because of everything that you've done for FUSTA. So it's going to be a great inspiration to everybody in the US and around the world.